Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm David Hankins,
I'm Paul Hankins.
and you're on the air with Power Squared. This week, we have a special guest. It's Ramon Gil, a comic book writer and artist who is one of the curators of Neurodiversity Comic Con that's taking place in early November in New York. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys.
Um, you approached us because of Moni Barrett at we know through Library Pass,
Right.
right? And
I re-
go
yeah, I
ahead.
reached out to Moni to if she knew anybody who would be in this space, and she gave me a list, and you guys were on the list.
Okay. Well, I'm glad, and we're sorry we can't attend or
But
take
thank you
one.
for the materials you sent.
Okay. Well, I hope they help with the
Yes.
cause. So tell us about how did okay. So you heard about us through Moni Barrett. Um, I see on your Facebook page that you're originally from the Philippines.
Yes.
When did you come to America or the U.S.?
I came here when I was 14, just in time to finish up junior high and go to high school.
Okay. And you went to high school and
I was an avid comic book guy, even in the Philippines.
okay. So what got you interested in doing comic books?
Well, what got me into comic books was my grandmother.
Okay.
My grandmother was an editor at a publishing house in the Philippines, and she had store credit at one of the bookstore chains, and she would let me just buy every comic book I could get to my hands on. And so it's her fault. It's her fault that I got into comic books. And back then in the 70s, Marvel and DC were licensing out their comic books to Philippine publishers. So there are these Philippine editions. So I have, like the death of Jean Grey and all these amazing issues, but they are in the Philippine editions. So I don't know what they would fetch at all, right? Because they weren't the first run printing. These were Philippine editions with Philippine ads in the back and things like that, right?
I imagine that would be kind of collectors for someone.
For somebody, yeah. And then when it was time to go to college, because I was always drawing, it just didn't occur to me to do anything else but to make comic books. So I was always drawing. I was always the kid in the class, the kid in the school who was asked to draw the mural here or the poster there. So it just seemed natural to me. In retrospect, I had tried. And now when I think about it, I think I would have enjoyed something like journalism or physical therapy. Because art is hard, right?
Yes. You per your bio, you've been cartooning since you were 10, and you're still waiting to get paid.
Yeah, we had a version of TV Guide in the Philippines, and and back then anime was a big deal going on in the Philippines, and I just drew this cartoon of an anime character, and I submit, and that TV magazine had a fan page where people could send in drawings, right? And so mine was published, but then the week like a month later, um, the government banned anime
Hmm.
in the
Oh
Philippines
wow.
because they thought it was too violent. And my cartoon, which was making fun of the anime characters, is what they used in the article.
Oh,
Hmm.
huh.
So so I would consider that more like an editorial cartoon
Yeah.
because, but I never got paid.
You never got paid. Okay. Um, so you've been interested in comic books since you were young. What do you have a favorite comic book growing up, or comic books growing up?
Um, my uncle, who was also a writer, gave me that old Doctor Strange Digest, the pocketbook,
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
and I just really got into Doctor Strange. So if I could ever work for Marvel, I would want to do Doctor Strange. So
Okay. Do you like his how he's presented in the movies?
I like most of it. I just don't like the fact that the magic is more like a martial art. He's conjuring up weapons and he's doing martial arts with them. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but otherwise, I enjoy it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other books that you were interested in besides Doctor Strange?
Everybody likes Batman, right?
Yeah.
And then Frank Miller was awesome with I love what he did with Daredevil.
Uh,
But I really like obscure characters. Like I'm not sure if you know who the Avengers, Richard Benson.
Yeah.
Bill Sienkiewicz did a mini series back in the 90s, I think. He's an old pulp guy, but DC owns him, and he's this and the Avenger he's called. He's it's weird. The Avenger is a DC.
Yeah.
And I like the Shadow, but I don't think he's DC anymore, right? He's just like his own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't come out very much anymore. Okay. So you went to college in California and then went to New York. You were saying?
Yes, I went to college in California, and then I started working for. There was this company called Vortex Comics, out of Canada, and they published. They used to publish. I think they were the original publishers of the Hernandez brothers, and they also did Mr. X. And for them, I was doing all these NASCAR autobiographies. I never learned so much about NASCAR. Oh my god! And it's like and the amazing thing is that I would buy all these NASCAR magazines, and I kid you not, every ad on that magazine, whether it was for an engine block or spark plugs, it was always a girl in a bikini holding it up.
Sure.
They knew that
Yeah.
hard to concentrate without using it for reference. So.
Yes. Yeah.
But they folded like after I was with them for about a year, and then I was still working with them when I moved to New York City. I moved to New York City about a year or so after college. I was working at a newspaper, and then I met Jim Shooter at San Diego, and he looked at my portfolio and he said, "If you ever make it out to New York City, come up and see me."
Wow.
So I said, so great. So I made plans to move out there. And then when I got there, I went up to the Define office, and he wasn't there that day,
Yeah, of course.
right? But then the next week, the whole industry tanked.
Oh.
And at the time, I was working for Vortex, and I was finding that I didn't enjoy it because I was new to New York City. I was in my apartment 16 hours out of the day. I had no friends.
Right.
And even in 1993, $80. It was $80 a page for me to do the pencils, and it would take me 2 days to do a page. So if you do the math, I was,
Yeah.
those were slave wages.
Yeah.
And the fact that I felt really isolated. So when the industry tanked, I had friends who were in advertising, and I just went into advertising. It was collaborative. It was good money, and I stayed there for like 20 years. I even started my own company.
Okay.
nice.
And then in around 2014, Amy Chu used to publish this magazine called A Magazine back in the 90s, and I was one of the freelance illustrators for the magazine. So we were Facebook friends. And when I saw that she switched from, I think she was doing some kind of like management consulting for a long time. When she switched to writing comic books, I basically asked her out to lunch and said if I could pick her brain, and she took me to the most expensive Korean restaurant in New York City, and then I picked her brain for 2 hours, and she gave me all this advice, which I thought was really great. So, and she's been sort of kind of like I wouldn't say quite a mentor, but she definitely, steers opportunities my way. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's good. So you're both a writer and an artist.
Yes. When I started in the 90s, I was primarily an illustrator, and I drew, and I tried to draw in that Marvel DC style with a lot of detail. Who was a big influence on me was George Perez was a very big influence on me back then. Walt Simonson. And then when I decided to come back in 2014, I remembered that my page rates, it took me 2 days to draw a page. So I decided in 2014 I would come back as a writer, right?
Yeah.
So then I could crank out a page I could write a whole book in over a weekend,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in theory, I could be working on multiple projects a month, but at the time I was working at a startup, so I had a lot of money coming in. I was able to hire illustrators to draw my books, and so that period around 2014 to about, I don't know, 2018, I was pretty prolific. I was self-publishing a lot of stuff and getting a lot of stuff into anthologies, and mostly writing them and getting other people to draw them.
Okay.
And then around 2020, I was teaching. I was teaching at a university out here, and they had a master's program in illustration. So I thought, let me get this master's. Partly to figure out a style that was much more efficient, and partly so it would be easier for me to get more teaching jobs in the future when you have your master's, right?
Yeah.
So I went through that program, and the funny thing,
This is the Fashion Institute.
Fashion Institute of Technology, right? And interestingly enough, the MFA was not for comic books, but I would say about half of the instructors were comic book people. So it worked out really well. And towards the end, I was telling my instructor that I just can't get the kind of lines I want out of the digitally, using the Cintiq. Right? Cintiq, I never know how to pronounce it. And he said, "Fuck it, just do it traditionally." But after 3 years in the program, in the last semester, the instructor said, "Fuck digital, just do it traditionally." So the last semester, I drew this book. Well, let me go back a little bit. When I was around 2015, 2016, I had this book called the Men from DARPA,
Right.
which was basically espionage, but they were scientists, so they would kind of like that X-Men spinoff, X-Files spinoff.
Uh-huh.
They were these dorky scientists who would go on adventures, kind of like that.
Okay.
And then I got to pitch it to Nickelodeon, actually. And they said, "We love the idea, but it's not for kids." Right? And I said, "Well, I could make it for kids. I could make it the kids from DARPA." And they said, "That's fine, but we've got 100 other people to see today, and their other projects are ready to go now." So I said, "Okay, got it." So that was like 2016, 2017, and 2022. I finally got around to making it the kids from DARPA.
Right.
And that's when I was trying to do it digitally, and I finally just decided to just ink it traditionally, pencil it, ink it traditionally, and then I just colored and lettered it digitally.
Wow.
So it worked out pretty well.
So you can do everything yourself.
Yes.
That's
coming from advertising, I learned how to do production, how to do printing, how to do, color correction, all that stuff. So it wasn't a big leap for me to go back into comics, this time digitally.
Right. And then you have you're still teaching it at FIT.
I teach in the summers at FIT, and I teach during the regular semesters at Yeshiva University.
Okay, what's that?
It's this Jewish university here in New York City. They have a male campus and a female campus, interestingly enough. I think they're the only campus that doesn't protest about Palestine.
Probably not. Yeah.
But it's a nice gig. The funny thing about yeshiva, the difference between FIT and yeshiva is that at FIT, you need a portfolio to get in. So when I teach at FIT, I'm teaching kids who want to be artists. So they have some drawing skills already. At yeshiva, they don't have an art program. So I'm teaching kids who are accounting majors, engineering majors, pre-med, and they're taking my class as an elective for fun.
Okay.
So they love
rounding them out.
Yeah, it's something completely different to them, but they have no drawing skills. So it's a catch. There's pros and cons to it. They are the most engaged students because they love it. It's completely different from what they usually do.
Right.
But I'm having to deal with skills that I usually am accustomed to the kids already having.
Right. Okay. So there's not going to be any great book come out of that.
Maybe once per class there'll be some kid who, who does a great job.
Right.
So
Um, you've also, according to your bio, worked with Atlas Unleashed, Bleeding Cool, The Beat, Comic Creator News. So have you been writing about comic books for them, or?
depends. Atlas Unleashed, publisher is Mark Mast, who used to be an art director, I think, over at, I would like to say, Warren, and maybe DC also.
We're
And
not going to check you.
he also put out his own books, and he published my first collection, right? So that was cool, and he's a good friend. And then and he introduced me to Bleeding Cool, to Richard Johnston over there, and very early on I was doing this podcast where I was interviewing creators, established creators. And in the beginning, sometimes I would interview them and transcribe the interviews. And Richard Johnson was happy enough to take some of those transcriptions and publish them as articles in Bleeding Cool.
That's pretty cool.
So I think the most memorable one, there was one wherein Trevor Von Eden, from the DC days, he's the creator of Black Lightning.
Yeah.
So he had. I was really worried because he didn't pull any punches when he talked about the DC days, and I was worried that if I published this, my name's going to be shit with DC. But I don't think they cared either way, and the turnover is so high. Everybody who was at DC when this thing got published is not there anymore.
Right.
Doesn't really matter.
See, and then you also worked with Comic Creator News, The Beat. Is that the same sort of thing, or is it?
The Beat, what I do, because I used to have a blog, and Heidi would sometimes republish some of my blog articles. So that's what I meant by The Beat. Comic Creator News, I didn't realize until, oh no, that's also Mark Maz. Mark Maz had his own podcast, and so he would just reprint some of my blog posts.
Oh.
So very seldom that I would write something originally just for them. Almost always it's something that I would post on my blog, and they would say, hey, can we republish this? So sure.
Oh, cool. And The Nerdist?
Same thing.
Okay. And The Comics Experience?
I was a member of Comic Experience, which is Andy Schmidt's group, right? It's an online workshop course, and sometimes I would also, same thing. They would republish some of my blog posts, or if I had some kind of press release that they felt was, they love to promote, I guess, any recognition from their alumni. So anytime I did something that was newsworthy, they would post it on their blog. So that was kind of nice.
I noticed in looking up stuff about you that there was wasn't a long article, but a little blurb on Publishers Weekly about this Neurodiversity Comic Con. I thought that was.
Yeah, I was at SPX this year, and Heidi McDonald from the Comic Beat came around and introduced me to John Marr from Publishers Weekly, and so he said, well, send me some information, and we'll post it.
Oh, that's cool. I was happy to see that for you. Okay, so let's talk about some of your titles. The Whiz Kids from DARPA you mentioned before.
Yeah, it's when I started doing comics again, I was just like everybody else. I just wanted to get it published, get into either one of the independents or even one of the micro publishers, right? And then after a couple of years, I realized that the problem with Image or any of those guys, there's a certain audience for Image Comics or for Dark Horse or for Valiant or whatever. and I felt like I wanted to go beyond that audience.
Okay.
You know, there are people out there, there I would say 90% of the population who don't read, you know, Image or DC or, and those are the people I also want to reach.
Yeah.
And I realized not that 90% will probably never read comics or graphic novels,
Right.
but kids are reading graphic novels and they're growing up to continue reading graphic novels.
Yes.
Young adults are reading graphic
Yeah.
novels. So I figured, well, if I wanted to reach a wider audience, I have to produce content that's not necessarily content for Image, Dark Horse, or those guys. We're talking about content for audience like Raina Tegelmeier or Dave Pikey, you know, those
Yeah.
caption understands, or your Diary of a Wimpy Kid audience. That's if you want a wider audience, that's where the wider audience is. It's kids and young adults,
Right.
not the direct market readers.
Yeah.
And I love the direct market and I love those titles, but I wanted a wider audience. You know, the books I want to write now are not necessarily direct market books. I want to break new ground, new genres. I have some this book the Whiskies from DARPA is a kid's book, but it's all about STEM, you know, science, technology, engineering, and math.
Right.
So that's what they use when they go on adventures. They use STEM.
Right.
You know, I want to do a having been an entrepreneur, having had my own company and all that, I want to do a business graphic novel on how to be a business person, how to start a business. You know, so I had some health issues a few years back. You know, some people are telling me I should really write about my experience having had a stroke.
Oh.
Right. So I actually sent out that pitch, but the truth is, I don't want to write about my stroke.
I think you probably want to forget about that as much as you can.
Yeah, I kind of want to forget about it, right? You
Yeah.
know, there'd be some interest in somebody surviving a stroke, and you know, I think I have a very good idea about it. And if somebody wants to publish it, I'll do it. But I'm not going. It's not at the top of my list.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Other titles was Everybody Needs a Hero.
Oh yeah. That was I got approached by a publisher, an educational publisher, and they wanted a comic book that taught kids about entrepreneurship, but also had diversity in it.
Okay.
Superheroes. So it's about a bunch of kids who start their own comic book company and create superheroes based on their culture.
Oh.
So that came out through Benchmark Press, or Benchmark Education, I should say. And the sad thing is, you can't get these books at retail. You have to get them through that company, and you have to be an educator. So you get a set of so many books and a teacher's guide and all that stuff. So yeah, it's not a typical book out in the. You can't get it at Barnes and Noble. You have to order it from them.
You have to be an educator.
For classroom use, basically.
Yeah.
So we're never going to read it, probably.
Unless you come to my table, then I sell it at a loss, basically.
Well, we just recently tabled at LA Comic Con, and
How was that?
it was a good experience for us. We'd never actually tabled at a major con, and LA Comic Con, if you want to throw that in, it's a major con. But we didn't make back the investment of the table and all that. It was just kind of for the experience of doing it. You know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right.
It was different to be on the table side of a con, watching people walk by and that kind of stuff.
You almost always have to think about it as marketing cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? You're doing it to promote, to get your name out there, to build awareness. It's almost like advertising rather than actual selling.
Right. We did sell a few books, but not nowhere near what the cost was to do it. But that was part of the reason we wanted to be out there and have people see us. We're trying to hopefully do WonderCon, and we've applied for Comic-Con as well. So we'll see if that happens. But yeah, it was sort of an interesting experience for us to do it. So
You gotta be careful. It's addicting.
it makes you think about the next one you want to do, or
It's a lot of fun, right?
it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but yeah, it is a lot of fun.
But I feel like when you're I'm at a con, I'm with my tribe.
Yeah, yeah. I
You
think
know.
it been. We were sort of we were in small press at LA Comic Con, so we weren't necessarily around a lot of other
Oh yeah.
comic book people. But yeah, it was kind of interesting to be there before people were setting up and all that, seeing kind of the behind the scenes stuff. That was kind of fun for us, I think, too. Because as if you attend a convention, you only get there when it opens. This was to see
Right.
it kind of
Exactly.
setting it up and stuff. So it was a little kind of that part was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And walking around ahead of time and seeing.
What I did a lot, I still do sometimes, is not so much with the bigger cons, but with the smaller and medium-sized cons. I'll say, hey, like I have these topics I can build a panel discussion around in exchange for a free table.
Ah.
And half the time they'll say yes. So half the time I'm not paying for it. Or nowadays, almost all the time I'm not paying for a table.
Well,
So,
we actually did a panel at LA Comic Con that I pitched.
yeah, there you go.
But they didn't say, and we'll give you a free table.
Yeah, it works better with the smaller cons because they don't have the resources to put together panels sometimes.
Right.
You know.
It was again, it was a good experience. We did meet some people that we probably wouldn't have met otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Another one of your titles is Truer Than Truesdale.
Yeah, a friend of mine from New York City had moved to California, and she was the PR person for the University of Southern California.
Hmm.
I think she was PR person. She was some admin person at USC.
Right.
And they were looking for ways to improve retention, to stop kids from dropping out. And so she came up with this idea that, well, let's do a comic strip where we follow some kids who are at risk of dropping out, and then they find the services available to them. You know, because campus will always have support services for kids, but a lot of the students don't know about it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
comic strip would follow their lives, and then they would go to, the LGBTQ center, or they would go to the career center,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So I did this. So she thought of me, and then so we did this comic strip, and it was posted on all the bulletin boards, in the school paper, and all the kiosks, and all the and on all the computer screens that they could, post stuff.
Uh-huh.
And then at the end of the run, we they printed it as a comic book.
Okay.
So
Huh.
that was nice. It wasn't like a direct market comic book, but it was a fun project. And what's nice about projects like that, which was a PR project from a big university, I think they pay like 3 or 4 times what I would have gotten if I had gotten through a comic book publisher.
Is it really just geared towards SC students?
In the sense that at the end there's a directory of all the services.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That would be.
But the story itself, I mean, any school that would have an LGBTQ center, any school that has, academic counselors, any school that has a career center, which is I think all of them, right?
Right. Yeah.
Theoretically could use it, but the settings. I mean, I was careful that when I drew the exterior shots, it was USC buildings.
Right. Okay. I was thinking maybe they could lower the price. That might help people stay.
There you go. This is pre-COVID, right?
Yeah. 'Cause I actually went to SC working on a doctorate, but you don't call me doctor, so I didn't get it.
Yeah, my dad went to SC for when we immigrated. He was an engineer and he had to recertify, and he went through USC to get his recertification.
I mean, it's a nice campus. It's just not.
Yeah, my siblings are still upset with me because they went to UCLA.
It's not a bad place either. He went to UCLA for writers
for certificate.
writing certificate.
But there's that rivalry between the two.
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
There you go. So,
Yeah. You also wrote something called Centuries with an S.
Oh yeah, that was my little experiment into manga style comics, and it was about the daughter of one of the Challenger astronauts,
Uh huh.
and how she discovers her father and didn't actually die in the
Ooh.
Challenger explosion,
Oh.
and that he was part of an elite force that defended the Earth against
I see.
against, like, meteors and comets and things like that, and anything else.
Huh.
They were like a secret force that had been protecting the Earth for centuries.
Oh, okay. And that's what. Okay. And so he survived. Did you get any?
Survived, yeah.
Okay.
And it's on the shelf now. I mean, I printed the first issue, and like the rest of the series is on script format. And one of these days, I'll dust it off and I'll finish it off.
And then there was sci-fi's.
Sci-Fi's was just the name of an anthology or a
Okay.
collection that I would publish. And in the beginning, it was all my stories, but in the last issue, was I invited friends to contribute, and it would all be science fiction based stories. And the only reason I called it sci-fi is because the domain name was available.
Fair
Uh,
enough.
one of the titles is called "The Bee That Your Son Created."
Oh yeah, and that's another thing that I would love to take off that to dust off the shelf. Um, and it was basically almost like a parody of of superhero comics in general. And it was drawn by this guy Roy Allen Martinez, who was an amazing illustrator. But just to tell you what the gist of the book was that there's a scene where I introduce his arch nemesis, the Wasp.
Ah.
I think it's the Wasp. The Wasp,
Oh, that makes
and
sense.
he said, and it says on the caption, the Wasp, though he could probably make millions by selling his inventions to the defense industry, he prefers to rob banks. So it's that kind of storytelling. So
Um,
It reminds me of a Spider-Man panel I saw where it was like, with that technology, you could cure cancer, but I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs.
basically, yeah. I
um,
think this predates that, so thank God.
was it fun working with your son?
It's always fun. I mean, he recreated in the sense that he basically just drew the character,
Right.
and then I
You wrote the. You kind of.
filled in the story.
How old was
Right?
he at the time he came up with that?
Must have been 8 or 9.
Hmm.
And actually, for the Whiz Kids from DARPA, I paid him to do all the research. Um, in the Whiz Kids from DARPA, all the science in the stories is real.
Uh huh.
And I would find the science, put in the story, then I would ask him to get more information about the science. And if you have the book, what you will see is at the end of every adventure is a QR code, so you can scan it. It will take you to a page on my site that talks more about the science and with links to articles.
Oh, that's cool.
So the book is somewhat interactive.
Oh.
And so my son was the one who did all the research for all that, the science, the fact stuff at the end of each chapter.
That's
Both of my kids have credits, because like one of the anthologies I did a few years back, my daughter did the coloring for the cover. So
let's bring the family. He's my son, and the other
Oh.
co-creator is my son as well, Trevor.
I thought you were brothers, actually.
Well, thank you. No, I'm the father, and his twin he's got a twin brother,
Yeah.
which is why we call it Power Squared. But
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We'll talk more about us later.
Yeah.
So, are any of these available in stores?
If you go to Amazon, most of them are available either on print or on Kindle,
Right. Okay.
except for Truer Than Truesdale, because that USC published that, so they have that's in that's their property. That was work for hire,
Right.
and also and everybody needs to hear you would have to go to Benchmark Education to get those.
Right. Okay.
And you would only be able to order a teacher's set of, I think, 6 issues plus the teacher's guide.
So you have to really want to read it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
You also obviously attend cons. I saw that you were led a panel at New York Comic Con in 2021. I'm sure you've been there since, I guess.
Yes, I this year was the first year that I didn't go to New York Comic Con actually.
Okay.
You know, the panel was for Sandy King Carpenter's comic book company, which she publishes with the director John Carpenter.
Yeah, I've heard him. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they just Janice Chang, who's their letterer, was a student of mine at FIT, and she and when their moderator didn't want to fly out from Los Angeles because of COVID, so Janice said, "Why don't you just have Ramon moderate it?" So it was a chance to moderate a pretty high profile company.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun.
Cool. Was John Carpenter a nice guy?
Now I never met him, but
Oh.
Sandy, I don't know that well, but like we'll talk when I see her.
Okay. You were at Carlisle Comic Con during New York Comic Con?
Yes. So at the time I accepted the invitation at Carlisle, I didn't realize it was the same weekend as New York Comic Con. And it's a 4-hour drive, so it's not like I could just pop in and pop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so you've done New York Comic Con, now you've done Carlisle Comic Con. It's got to be a way different experience.
Oh yeah, it's Carlisle Comic Con is about 100 tables. It's like a miniature version, basically, of New York Comic Con. I mean, these were not necessarily diehard fans as much as they were just families looking for something fun to do on the weekend.
Yeah. Okay.
Unlike New York Comic Con, you really want to be at New York Comic Con if you're going to New York Comic Con, because it's like 150 per day. The lines are long to get in.
Right.
So
yeah.
And it's super crowded. Sometimes you can't even get through an aisle at New York Comic Con.
Yeah, that's true at San Diego too.
Yeah, very similar.
Sometimes it feels like swimming upstream.
Yeah, exactly.
But did you have a good time at Carlisle?
Yes, I did. I mean, the guy who played Captain Marvel and back in the 70s was there. The Knight Rider car was there.
We had the Back to the Future car at LA Comic Con.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
I
just found out that the Ecto 1 will be at Neurodiversity Comic Con.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So
that's really
cool. We're gonna get out of that.
At FIT, you created Diversity Comic Con.
Yeah.
And was that just to bring people with different backgrounds and
right
together?
Well, there's an interesting story behind that. My friend Fabrice Sapolsky, who was the creator of Spider-Man Noir, had put together Jewish Comic Con here in New York City. And he kept telling me, Ramon, you should do an Asian American Comic Con. You should do an Asian American Comic Con. And I didn't really want to be known as the Asian American comic book guy, right? I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that I didn't want to get pigeonholed or something like that.
Yeah, I got that.
But then I was at FIT. I was teaching at FIT, and one of my colleagues, she was actually my mentor. She said, "Attend this workshop on how to get grants, diversity grants." So I went to the workshop, and it occurred to me, well, I don't have to do an Asian American Comic Con. I can do a Diversity Comic Con.
Right.
That I would like to do. So it's much more inclusive.
Right. Yeah.
So I filled out the grant application, and then then they told me, and they assigned one of the another faculty member to guide me with the grant application. And she said, she looked at it after I submitted, and she said, it's not going to get approved. And I said, why not? Well, because you have a profit-making component in your grant application, and that's a big no-no. If they're going to give you money, they don't want you making any money off of it.
Okay.
Right.
So
I said, darn, I guess I'm not going to get it. I'll just wait till next year. I'll do it again without the profit-making component. But then I got an email that said your grant application has been approved, right?
Right.
Will you please make an appointment with a VP of diversity?
Huh.
Thinking, how did that happen? I thought I wasn't supposed to get it, right? Because I broke the rules, right?
Yeah.
But I figured I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna go to the meeting.
Yeah.
I'll see what happens. And when I got there, it all made sense. The VP of Diversity's office was a shrine to Batman. So he wanted to see a Comic Con. And in fact, he was so excited that on the day of the Comic Con, he showed up as Batman. And security wouldn't let him in because he had a mask on.
Right.
And they didn't recognize him. You can't wear that mask, and then so he had to take it off before they would let him in.
Now, do you do this every year, or is that a one-shot deal, or?
Well, I was doing it every year until COVID hit.
Right.
And then the Great Hall, which is what we call the space, was turned into a COVID testing area. And they reconfigured it. So during COVID, I couldn't use the hall at all.
Right.
We tried to do virtual like for 2 years, but it just wasn't the same. And then the third year of COVID, the VP of Diversity, the Batman guy,
Right. Oh.
and that meant there's nobody there to sort of like champion and push through funding for this event. And the hall wasn't available. He was gone. And I wasn't teaching regularly. I was only teaching in the summers at that point, and I said,
Yeah.
that's okay.
It's not gonna happen.
It's not going to happen until Gillen Brewer asked me to do. But I'm actually, and I haven't told a lot of people yet, but I'm planning on bringing back Diversity Comic Con hopefully in 2026.
Okay.
Right.
Well, breaking news here on the.
There you go.
You also are you lead comic arts workshops.
Yes, during COVID, one of the things that Amy Chu told me was to make sure to try to get on panels, right? Because that's how you connect with people in industry, right? And I decided to take it one step further because I've always liked putting on events. I started hosting a meeting once a month. I would just rent a space in New York, in Manhattan, and I posted on Meetup, and once a month we would have a guest creator come and speak, and people started showing up, and we had Neil Adams 1 year or 1 month. The funny thing about Neil Adams is he tells the same. At that point he was telling the same story over and over again wherever he went, but that's okay. He was Neil Adams, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So and then COVID hit, and then we took it online. We put it on Zoom because nobody could, we couldn't meet. And what I discovered was that I could get guest speakers from outside of New York City
On
doing,
Zoom,
and I could get attendees from outside of New York City. And ever since then, and to this day, I'll ask a speaker, "Do you want to do Zoom or do you want to do live?" And they almost always say Zoom. So okay. And anyway, so the comic arts, that's originally what the comic arts workshop was. And then during COVID, I decided to offer a paid course. And so we got a cohort, and it was great. We produced an anthology, and then COVID faded, and then that faded.
Oh.
And I keep thinking of bringing it back, but we all have things we want to do but don't have time for, right?
So you enjoy teaching?
Yes, I enjoy teaching. I like putting on events actually, but what I'm finding is that I like shorter events. Like I like doing Comic Cons because it's one or 2 days.
Right.
Right. And what I'm finding is I'm teaching at university. It's 15 weeks. After like the 8th week, I'm going, oh my god. And that's what happened with that paid course I was doing. The plan was to go, every week to have a class, and that was just killing me. It's like I realized I should just do like one class or a 2-day class, and then not do it for like a month or two and then do another 2-day class.
Right. Maybe do it every week or however.
Yeah, but what I'm also finding out um, is that it's very hard to make money doing this because, for the most part, comic creators aren't rich.
No.
They don't have a lot of money. So,
I
but what
I
I'm
can tell you
finding
that.
is
Yeah.
that what I'm discovering, and I have to figure out how to make this work, is that parents will pay for their kids to go to a comic book workshop, and
Right.
they're more than happy to plunk down some nice change for the kids to do something that they love.
Right.
So I have to figure out the logistics of that. So
Okay. So now you're one of the, as you say, curators behind the Neurodiversity Comic Con.
I think I'm the only curator.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you're the curator, which takes place on November 9th at Gillen Brewer School. How did you get involved with that?
Gillen Brewer was the school that my son attended when he was from kindergarten to I think third grade, and it's a great school for kids who have who are atypical learners, right? And when I published with Kids from DARPA, I donated copies to all the schools that my kids went to, and then they contacted and said, "Hey, Ramon, why don't you come over and give a talk?" And so I went over and gave a talk, and then the director said, "Let's chat for a little bit. We have this idea for a Neurodiversity Comic Con, and we saw that you organized Diversity Comic Con. Is that anything you can help us out with?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to do it. I like organizing." So I brought in the creators. I curated the exhibitors. That was my job, and their job was to do all the logistics and to bring attendees in. So that means that their families and the other communities, the neurodivergent community. So
That's cool. Um, is the plan to make this an annual event?
I guess it depends on how successful this one will be, right? So we'll
Um,
see.
and are all the creators neurodiverse or?
Some have neurodiverse content. Some are atypical, and some are just producing kids' work that I think that the atypical kids will enjoy, even though they're not necessarily atypical content, neurodivergent content.
Okay. Well, we're happy to be I see we're an additional sponsor of the event, which I think is really
Yeah.
cool, by the way. So I hope that the books that we sent will help with the.
Yeah.
Have you read any of Power Square?
I haven't. I just finally took inventory this morning of all the things that we received. The book looks nice though.
Okay.
I gotta crack it open still. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, it hurts, but it's okay. But if you do read it, let us know what you think.
Definitely.
And we'll be happy to send you something if you want. So, what is your social media presence?
Oh, primarily Instagram.
Okay.
So there are two accounts. There's Ramon Gil Art, which is actually less active. The most active is WizKids DARPA,
Okay.
because that's just my focus is just promoting that book.
Um,
And then you can always find me on Facebook. I'm happy to engage with people on Facebook.
Are you on Twitter at all, or X?
I have a Twitter account, or X, but I don't really use it.
Okay, because we have an X account. We're thinking about moving to
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
Yeah, because
Yeah, I'm sort of overwhelmed. There's so many
yeah,
you have to do. I like the fact that on Instagram, if you post on Instagram, you can have it automatically post on Facebook as
Right.
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's nice. We do that too.
I'm not sure if or X does that or Blue Sky does that. I'm sure they do.
Well, it used to be able to. We have a website through GoDaddy, and you can do social posts, and you could do it to Facebook and Instagram. You used to be able to do it to X, but they changed their algorithm or whatever, so now you can't do that.
Yeah,
Oh, I have a ton of.
They changed the API thing.
Yeah.
I have a ton of content on YouTube.
All right.
Good. Okay. So
So
do we.
if you go to my page and you go to media, you'll see all the interviews I've done with people.
Right.
Well, not all, just the ones that since we started doing Zoom, I've been able to record them. But prior to Zoom, like the Neil Adams one is not on there.
Okay.
So that was pre-Zoom.
Okay. So how would people find out more about Neurodiversity Comic Con?
They can just Google it and it'll show up, Neurodiversity Comic Con, and it's the first. I think the Publishers Weekly article comes up first, but then the web page itself comes up
Yeah, that's
second.
yeah. I found that that way too. Okay. And so you also have a website,
Yes, RamonGilComics.com.
so people can go there and see what you've done and
Right. They'll see, some of the a lot of the work. Some of the work is published work. Some of the work is self-published work, and some of it's just personal work.
right.
So and what's interesting about that site, and is that I hand coded it. It's not WordPress. It's not
Oh,
Wix. It's not Squared. It's all hand coding. So,
wow. Okay. I took
and
the
I had to design it in such a way that it was mobile friendly.
Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show and hope you have a big success with.
Well, thank you very much. Well, let me. We have like 10 minutes. Let me ask you. I would like to hear more about Power Squared.
Okay.
How did you guys get started?
We were. I guess we had gone to. We attend San Diego Comic Con quite a lot, and one year we came back. We were me and Paul and Trevor, his brother, were talking about, hey, we should do something, and so we had the idea for doing a comic book about identical twin brothers that share superpowers.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so then we had to figure out, like, okay, how do they share them? Why do they share them? And we were partly because there wasn't a lot of identical twins that were.
We at the time, Turn, I didn't think there were that many identical twin protagonists in things that we grew up with.
Right. So
I can only think of two.
what? Yeah,
I can only think of two identical twins. No, they're not even identical twins. They're fraternal twins. Those the two from Alpha Flight,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and then the Wonder Twins.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are the only two I can think of.
Yeah. So we decided to, not knowing anything really about comic books, to do one. So we created it, wrote the first couple of issues, and then started looking for an artist. And we didn't know really anybody in the industry or whatever, and we tried to go through the Comic Creator Connection that they have at San Diego Comic Con, and which is like kind of like speed dating. You get like 5 minutes with somebody, you show them your stuff, and there's way more writers than there are artists there, and so we actually, I always like to think of it as speed dating, and we never got a date, and. So we eventually, there was a guy at, and I forgot his name. When we were at WonderCon one year, they were doing it, and he came through saying he was on a panel, but he handed out information to all the people waiting, and he was the best artist that was at that panel, because there were a lot of them were just I could draw, they didn't bring any samples or anything, so. We thought about contacting him, and we actually sent him a book, and he didn't like it, and so we rewrote it, and we were going to send it to him again. And I thought, I've noticed on his Facebook that he was part of a group where it connects writers and artists together. So we used that to find our first artist, Sika Mirti, who was out of the Philippines.
What's his name?
Sika Murti.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. I wasn't expecting you to. Oh, yeah. But he was in the Philippines, and we also found our first colorist, who was out of Indonesia, and so we did a couple of issues. We were trying to get it through Comixology at the time, and Chip Mosier, who was the kind of the guy behind it,
Yeah.
was actually open to helping us, and he looked at the first couple of issues, and the story was good, the art was okay, the lettering, which Trevor was doing, could be better, and the coloring is awful. Got to get a new colorist, and so he helped us find a colorist through Savannah College of Art and Design. So we hired a colorist through there. He did 2 issues. Then he wanted to do something else, so a friend of his took over and did the next 3 issues. And by the time we got to issue 5, we all were kind of thinking that we needed to find a new artist because it was taking too long to get the books done, and the art was becoming a little inconsistent, and we wanted to move on. And so she helped us find an artist at SCAD, Rachel Wells, who did issues 6 through 23 for us. And what?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, like that's a lot of issues.
Yeah. And we're working on 27 and 28, as a matter of fact. So yeah, we don't. We don't know. Maybe we're too stupid to stop or whatever, but we've enjoyed, doing it, and we've had a series of colorists in between. And I always felt like we're breaking colorists because they want to do it, and then after I thought, I want to do something else now, So turning people out, they go into different careers and all sorts of stuff.
We've been assured it was a coincidence.
Yes. It was weird too, is that we never met any of these people face to face. It was all through emails or Facebook.
I think that's the norm nowadays.
Yeah.
I think 90% of the people I've collaborated with, I've never met in person.
Yeah. We never met our first colorist or second colorist. The third one, we actually we had her on our podcast when we were doing putting together that the first anthology or trade that you have, which is 1 through 5, and so we had her on the show to talk about it, catch up with her. We actually had never seen her, until we saw her on a podcast, and then Rachel finally decided that she wanted to try to do something else, and our colorist at the time, Julia Cannon, showed she had some talent. She had done some. We had done a signing at Golden Apple Comic Books in Hollywood. And,
oh my God, it's still there?
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's still thriving as far as I know. So we gave her a shot to be the artist, and it kind of worked for about 4 issues of work, and then moving on to another artist, Jen Moreno, who had started again as our colorist. So we'll see how it goes. But she's working on 28, and
now I'm excited to take a look at the book.
yeah. So yeah, we're it's sort of a fun thing to do, and I like working with, I enjoy the kind of the give and take of working with artists, and that part's kind of interesting and fun, and we hope that eventually people will discover it and read it. So
You just gotta keep doing it. Well, I just read that quote today. You don't really fail until you stop trying.
yeah.
So,
Well, we haven't stopped trying yet. So
there you go.
yeah. So hopefully we want to continue it for a while still.
Yeah.
But that's great that you can work with your sons. That must be a really great experience.
You could ask him. Is it a good experience?
Yeah.
And
I don't know about your sons, but my kids, I had to pay them to do these things.
well, I have to pay Trevor to be the letterer.
Oh, okay.
And Paul is promised if there's ever a payday, he'll get something out of it. But,
I got something out of it, right?
yeah, I like to say that everybody's made money on this but me. So
it's usually the writer who doesn't make any money.
that's so true. So anyway, we do appreciate you being on the show.
Sure thing. I hope to meet you in person one of these days.
Yeah. Oh, we're hoping.
I'll let you know if I'm ever out there for a con, and you guys let me know if you're ever out here.
Okay, we will definitely. All right.
And Are we Facebook friends yet or not yet?
I don't think we are. We can become Facebook.
I'll find you guys.
Okay. All right. So thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks, Paul.
The outro. If you're watching this on YouTube later and you liked this, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment below if you are interested in Neurodiversity Comic Con. And
Yes, thank you.
if you are looking for a silent fidget toy, use our affiliate code Marty and Eli to save 10% off your purchase at onoroller.com.
All right. So until next time, I'm David Hankins,
I'm Paul Hankins.
and you've been on the air with Power Squared. Bye.
Thanks, guys.